And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Morning, Nora. How you doing?
Hello, Brian. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Doing all right. Yeah. Things are going great on this side of the country. It's been
Excellent.
weather is now changing, so we've had cherry blossoms for the last thing. That's right. You and I weren't talking during cherry blossom season, but
Right?
Washington D.C. is sort of famous for that. And it was so
Yeah.
funny. For the longest time, it was so cold, and they said, "Oh, it's not gonna hit until the second week of April. It's gonna be really delayed this year." And then we had, like, 4 90-degree days out of
Uh-huh.
nowhere, and all of
Yep.
a sudden, everybody's saying, "Nope, hang on, here they come."
Here it
And we're
comes. Woo! It's
and
happening
we
right
had a
now.
couple days, and it was there. It was just, "Oh." And I've got a late blooming cherry in my front yard, and it's already blooming. And usually that's not
It's so
until the beginning of
beautiful.
May. So I thought, okay, things are definitely heating up out there. It's been mid 80s, if not a little warmer. And today it's 50. Yesterday we had a freeze advisory. So it's all over the map.
Well, we had thunderstorms yesterday, and it was one of those thunderstorms. California doesn't get thunderstorms. You in the East Coast do. Like you'll
We
have
do.
regular afternoon thunderstorms. We get them very rarely. It was like both Al and I jumped. It was so loud. It was right over our house. And again, we're not so used to it and pouring rain. So, who knows? It is one of those wacky times.
Yep. We actually had thunder snow this past year at one
Oh,
point,
wow. I've heard about that.
which I've only heard of, and then when it was, snowing moderately and we heard thunder,
Yeah.
and it was sort of, "Wait, no, those don't go together." And
No.
Leah says, "Oh, no, no, that's called thunder snow." I said, "No, no, 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 no. They're supposed to be I don't need more
Thunder?
things put together."
No, we do not need this is like what they call the bomb cyclone. Like, stop making up these names that just terrify you. Like, what
Bingo,
what do other
exactly.
people
That's
do?
exactly what it
You
felt
know?
like.
It's like, good Lord, people.
Well, last week, we've
Awesome.
gotten some good responses about last week. We talked about fitness fads and trends. And the
Yeah.
one thing, the hour went by so fast that we really didn't talk about future. And
Yeah.
coming from being at the convention, what now it's been 2 weeks ago, there was a lot of talk about the future of fitness and things. And the thing that was probably on everybody's mind was artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. And we've had a couple conversations about this, and then I think yesterday there was an article in the New York Times about it. So it certainly is. It is on our minds. We'll put it that way. So we kind of wanted to spend some time talking about that today, and what that means in terms of what we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. And just overall, what it could mean for the industry. But before we get
Yeah.
into that, do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe button. We really appreciate it. Every comment, every like, every subscribe really helps us a ton. So please do us a favor. That way it's delivered in your inbox every Tuesday. You can also check us out on YouTube under my name, Brian Ritchie. If you want to reach out to us, you can do it through email, movingconvos@gmail.com. We've been getting a few of those, as well as through DMs through Instagram, Moving Convos on Instagram. So let's talk a little bit about AI.
Holy moly. So my husband is a ex-electrical engineer and a major follower of all things tech. So we had a really good conversation on his perspective about this, because he's been really trying to keep up on what AI is doing. And then again, this article, it's like, what's so interesting to me is that AI has this potential, and I am calling it potential. It's
Yeah.
some of it's actualized, a lot of it is not yet. It has this potential to take a huge amount of data from many, many different sources, condense it, and kind of give you the nuggets, right? The
Mm-hmm.
best nuggets, if you will. And in terms of our world, in terms of fitness, that has some really positive benefits on the science side, and it has some interesting benefits on the training side. So let's just dive in and
Well,
see where we go with all of that.
something you and we've talked about this because when we're creating classes, we try and do our due diligence. We go and try and read the research, everything latest, up to date. And it is so funny when you type certain things in, what AI thinks you mean and what
Right.
you truly mean, because it gives you a definition of something that is really not there whatsoever. I saw
Yeah.
this Okay, forgive the visual of this, but I saw someone post something that said, "What medical test is this talking about?" Because the medical test was an eye examination. However, that's what AI said it was. However, what it was a catheterization of the urethra to check for prostate cancer. Exactly. Because someone's eyeball was looking into something, they automatically assumed it was an eye exam of some sort. And
They call this a hallucination, right? I mean, that's what they
mhm.
call these funny results from AI as a hallucination.
Yeah, and I laughed so hard at that because I looked and I said, "Wait a minute." At first, I was when I first glanced at it, I said, "Oh, that looks really whoa, yeah, don't wanna have that." And then I was like, "Wait, what is it?" And it really took me by surprise, and I went, "Oh, okay, this is, a huge misunderstanding." But you and I, when we were doing research for, one of our classes last summer, it's amazing when you type something in, you get these artificial results. I mean, we've seen it a
Yeah,
lot in politics and in lawsuits. I mean, how many times have we heard now that AI is creating fake documentation and whatnot, and court cases that don't really exist,
fake scientific studies too, big
and
time.
throwing that out there. And unfortunately, I don't know about you, but I know quite a few people. I have clients, very, very
Yeah.
smart people who are
Yep.
all on board for AI like you wouldn't believe. That they
Mhm.
think it's gonna solve all the problems of man, and I keep reminding them, "No, no, 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 no. We have a lot of work to do before we can trust it. There's a lot of work to do here."
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, this gets into the whole idea of research and how that works and bias. And like, there's so many complexities here. So we'll try not to be super nerdy, but we might get a little nerdy here.
Sure.
Because like for example, I was reading, another article and they said something like 900 articles were research papers were pulled because they were false. They were
Yeah.
basically made up. And these are ones that have been peer reviewed that are showing up, many of them in reputable or semi-reputable journals, kind of one or two levels
Mhm.
down from the big names. And finally they just went through and they realized there was like one lead investigator was on like a million papers. It's like, this is not possible. And then they started to go through and realize these were false. They were not actual research papers. And AI, because it has this ability to take things and mimic them extremely effectively, right? Understand
Mhm.
what the form is and what like data tables look like and all that. They can essentially say, make up a study on the best way to strengthen your quads, right?
Mhm.
And they could make up a study that could look legitimate. So this is where things get wacky. I mean, that's the wacky side of AI, that it can
Absolutely.
really just throw things off and give a lot of false information. On the positive side, and I always have to talk through both sides on this because my brain goes
Absolutely.
in both directions. If you think about it as being able to take legitimate data, whatever that is, and consolidate it, look at all the data for, improving VO2 max, for example, looking at
Mhm.
all the data from all the studies, and then kind of putting all that together, that could lead us to new conclusions or new insights,
Right.
right? So on the positive side, it has that ability to take way more data than we've ever put together and put it together, right? And make it meaningful. So those are like two big deals.
And I think the thing that needs to bridge those 2 is a filter. It's a proper filter,
Yeah,
because you can take 10,000 articles written on VO2 max, but if 30 of them are completely made up, false information, false data, that's still part of the general collective. And how
right,
much of that will equate into the conclusion,
right,
we don't know. And we'd never
right.
know. You want
Exactly.
to assume that the information is correct. But you and I talked about this, what, a year ago, and we talked about how do you read scientific studies?
Right.
You can read a scientific study. You and I can both read it. And if we don't read the conclusion or the discussion at the end, we may have different conclusions in our own head. We may have a bias going in that by the end of
Yep.
it, I'm looking at it through one lens, you're looking at it through another lens, and the author of the paper or authors may be looking at it through their lens. And so then it's going to be filtered much differently depending on who's writing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's one of those things where I think, because they're using it for things like coding and they're using it for things
Mhm.
like lawsuit, lawyers. And if any of you have ever read a real contract, there's like so many boilerplate, there we go, boilerplate points in it. And so
Mhm.
there's a lot of that stuff that could just be done like this is what's usually done here, da, 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 and go through and evaluate it. But the thing about it, and I think you said this really clearly, is what gets delivered from ChatGPT or whatever other search you're
Mhm.
using for is not filtered by anybody. It's not reviewed. It's not anything. It's the data's out there. The data's taken in by the chatbot or whatever thing you're using, and it's spit out back to you. And there isn't that
Mhm.
moderator. And that's one of the things about scientific studies. It's like ideally there's a moderator. Ideally those things are peer reviewed, but not always. And not always well. And as you said, if it matches your bias, if you think this works better than that, and that's what this study says, you're more likely to go, oh yeah, that's a good study, even if it's not,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I have a client who's prominent attorney. And she says she does this all the time with ChatGPT and Gemini and all the different bots. She
Yeah,
will take
yeah,
whatever she's working on
yeah,
and just throw it out there to see what comes back. Because part of it is she wants to see one, are her paralegals kind of doing this kind of stuff and
right. Are
bypassing
they
hard court?
matching? Right, right. Yeah,
I'm not saying that's why she's doing it, but she said there's probably a little bit of that going on, of course. And she said it is amazing at how much misinformation and how much garbage comes through that there
yeah,
is no way, but she's the filter. So,
yes, right. So there's a gatekeeper on that information,
uh-huh.
which is kind of you kind of need somebody who's got some understanding of this of the subject to be able to look at it and go, okay, that makes perfect sense. That's great. This is just wacky,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And do you want to be the result of someone trusting AI for something important? It's one thing if it was for
Mm.
photography. Okay, if a picture is messed up, I actually saw online yesterday something that I know because I was there and saw what it really looked like in real life and how many people were there and, all the different
Mm.
dignitaries and all this kind of stuff. And I was legit there. And then I looked at the pictures and was like, wait, huh? Okay. I don't remember that. This
Uh-huh.
was a long
That wasn't.
the event took place a long time ago or a
Yeah.
while ago, but you could see that they pieced in and filled in the room and put extra people on
Uh-huh.
stage and did all this kind of stuff. I'm
Oh my
thinking, I
gosh.
was there. I know
And
that's
that
not
was
what
not
happened.
real.
That was
That's
not what
funny.
happened. I'm positive.
Right.
So
Right.
it's one thing to do it with photography. Okay, I
Because
get
because
that
we've been dealing
there's
with that for a long time.
Photoshop has
Like, we've
been
been dealing with
around
that since Photoshop,
30
right?
years,
Or since
50 years,
before
something
that,
like that.
really. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we learned when I was in school, this whole topic of AI made me think of, okay, in the last 30 years since I've been in the industry, what has brought us toward this thing? And kind of like when I was in college, long time ago, we learned Photoshop. We had a computer class and it was some coding and it was this and that, but we learned the beginnings of Photoshop. And it was kind
Mhm.
of cool, that you could do these things and, you put your head on, some star's body or, you take
Yeah,
this and
yeah.
that. And it was kind of cool to do that kind of stuff and learn what to do. But then fast forward to now and you see, wow, you can literally make me standing with, the president of Zimbabwe and shaking the person's hand.
Right.
And if it's online, a lot of people are going to believe it because it's just,
Uh-huh.
oh, okay, obviously it's a picture and it's online. It must be true, even if it
Exactly.
never existed.
Seeing is believing,
Right.
right? Seeing is believing.
Right. And that's a big thing. And in our industry, like I said, I was trying to think back. When I read that article, I thought, oh, yeah, there's been a lot of, I'm going to call it pre AI technology. which basically
Disruption
you would
things.
have a computer program, you would have something, and you would say, I want to increase my squat, I want to increase my, mile run time, whatever it is, in 6 months. And it would give you a sample of what you should do. What it was based on, who the heck knows? Probably the one person who designed the program made it on his understanding, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But, and it was fairly okay for what it was. It gave you a
yeah,
general guide. And if you knew nothing about running, if you knew absolutely nothing and you read that, you'd think, oh, I could run a 5K in, 6 or 8 weeks if I follow this program. Well, guess what? You probably could. Just getting
yeah,
out and gambling about
exactly.
and running around, you could probably figure that out as well. But it gave you at least a little bit of science for people who didn't know any better.
And one of the things in this article, which I thought was interesting, was they were focused primarily on running.
Right.
All right, and again, Brian, I like to make this distinction. There are certain activities that are repetitive, where I would say the training protocols are fairly well understood. Like if you
Mhm.
want to, let's say you want to run a marathon in 6 months and you've been running, 5 to 10 miles a week for a while, it can probably say, okay, to increase your mileage, do X, Y, Z. There's been a lot
Yep.
of people that have done that. There's a lot of information about how to do that. And then you just have to execute, which,
Yep.
is always up to the individual anyway. Um, when we talk about the kind of work that Brian and I do, and that many of you out there do, which is more analytical, more trying to figure out why those biomechanics aren't working or why their knee hurts after they run more than 6 miles or whatever it is, it's a different question. It's not a
Mhm.
question of this number of miles for this number of days in a row, taking rest time here. It's not really a question of that. It's a question of
Mhm.
what is the quality of the movement, not the quantity of the movement. And it's just a different question, a harder one to answer with AI.
Much harder because again, I've I've worked with a number of people who are training for a marathon. And they all
Right.
come to me and say, "But I've been doing what the book told me. I've been doing what my coach told me. I've been doing what this whatever was told me to do." I said, "Okay,
Yeah.
you were a desk jockey up until 8 weeks ago. You might go
Right.
and run a 5K once a year. Look, almost any of us could probably go out and halfway jog a 5K and not have much of effect. Okay, that's just the way it is. It's not that far.
Yeah.
However, a marathon is a different animal. And when you have to get
Yeah.
into running 13, 14 miles at a clip, 15 miles at a clip toward the latter as you get closer to the race, guess what? The repetition is going to wear down your body in ways that it hasn't been before. And
Right.
a computer isn't necessarily going to see that as easily. And could you stand in front of a camera and do certain things? I'm sure that there are advanced ways to do that. We did that in kinesiology labs and things where you put dots all over your body and, did exercises. But is it really going to watch you run? In a vacuum
Well,
that a clinic is or at a study is ideal situation, not on the road, not out
it's
there in
also
real life.
it's also huge amounts of technology.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
because we've talked about in other contexts, in my professional life, we've talked about how do you use cameras, pressure plates, et cetera, to
Yeah.
determine, quality of movement, right?
Yep.
So, like on the reformer, how do you, let's say, put a pressure plate on a foot bar and you're more weight on the right leg or more weight on the left leg? Like questions like that. And those are interesting questions, and they would give you more data that might relate to quality over time. But there is something about the human eye and the human brain that can process
Mhm.
a lot more input in a holistic system like the human body more quickly, more efficiently over time with training than a machine can. Like to train a machine to have that kind of eye, it can happen because AI can show you that can happen, but the training process is intense and
And
extremely expensive and still
expensive.
arbitrary. And still it's going to be a little arbitrary, right? Because you're not going to watch somebody do everything, like do everything they would do in a Pilates session, everything they do in a personal training session.
That's the key. That's the
You
key.
know?
Anybody who's ever done an assessment, knows we're people
Mhm.
pleasers. So you have someone squat, they're going to try and do the best squat they possibly can for you. You
Right.
ask them to
Right.
lift their arms over their head, they're going to try and do it as they think it should be done.
Right.
It's not natural movement. Whereas in a workout, when you're talking, when you're thinking about something else, or when the radio's playing something and you're dancing along halfway in your head and you're turning and you want to see yourself in the mirror, all of these variables are going to affect what we see. Our
Yeah.
brains
Yeah.
can filter and tune all that out. I was working with a client today. He was deep in conversation talking about some sports team. I was only half listening because I was watching his form and everything. And I kept having to say, okay, you put too much weight in your right leg. Okay, I want. And it's because he kept changing these subtle, small changes. And I was trying to get him to be as close as possible because he's got multitude of issues. So if you get out of that way, he starts to get injured. So I had to be that way. But I don't assume AI is going to, even if you put your camera on you, that it's going to tell
Yeah.
you in your ear every second of every day. And if you think it's bad now going to the gym with people filming themselves with cameras and getting upset with people walking in between their camera and I've seen fights. I've seen fights at
Oh,
gyms. I'm
yeah.
not joking. Someone walks in front of the camera. Can't you see I'm filming? It's like, this isn't a
You're in
photo
the gym,
shoot. This is
dude.
the gym.
Right.
Get
Exactly.
real,
And I gotta get from
but
here to there.
exactly. It's like, I'm not going around the whole gym just because you're trying to get your picture taken here just and they film every single repetition. And I think, man,
Oh,
I haven't
geez.
got the time or energy for that. But
Well,
unless you
then
have
do you
that,
I mean, do you actually watch any of these? Like,
that's
do
what,
you actually watch this then? You've got
you
all
know
this
what?
video on your camera. You doing anything with it? Because that's just
I think
a
it's,
lot of stuff.
I think it's a lot of filtering. I think they take
Yeah.
snippets for Instagram and all these kind of things. And for some people, okay, if you're a bodybuilder and you're looking at certain things, symmetry, all of this kind of stuff, okay, there's something to be said about having that film in front of you. Uh, just like if you are a high level performer, if I was an Olympic weightlifter, form could mean the difference
Yeah.
between probably 20, 30, 40 pounds more weight being lifted in, the snatch or the clean and jerk or even the deadlift. So in that sense, okay, maybe if I'm an Olympic athlete, I may want to have the video put on me. We talked about the Olympians this year. If I was a skier, maybe I'd want to watch all of that footage and be able to say, oh, did you see this angle? Oh, I think we need to lean a little bit more here. I think we need to do this there. That's at a high level. And they've got people
Yeah.
who are taking the data, looking
Yeah.
at it, telling you what
Yeah.
to do. I don't quite
Exactly.
know how well a computer's going to tell me that. First of all, how much am I going to trust it? But how well it's going to do at the job.
Well, it's also unless, and again, thought about this a lot, unless you have cameras from all angles, at
All
least from front, back, side to side, something
mhm,
like that. You've got to be able to see more than just one face. I mean, you and I both done a lot of sessions on Zoom,
mhm.
right? Where you've got a
You're so
camera and maybe you have
limited.
them move their camera around a bit, but you've got one view and maybe they're moving around a little. But it's like the things I don't see, like I think it's, I call it about 70% at its best.
Mhm.
It's about 70% as good as live because you can see a
Yeah.
lot if you've got a decently trained eye, but there's all kinds of stuff you're going to miss.
Yes.
Right? So even if you have, three, five, four cameras, let's say, going the whole time, you still got to then take that data, understand it, and then be able to figure out why that body, because if you and I did the same thing, same moves with the same four
Mhm.
cameras, you're going to get completely different data. You're taller, you're a
100%.
different size, you've got different ranges of motion. So then how do you figure out the data that's good for you versus the data that's good for
Mhm.
me? Unless you
Exactly.
basically train it on 800 million bodies and then also have like their health history and other kinds of things there. It gets pretty complicated to really look at
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah. I mean, you've looked at trying to create it in, the Pilates world, and that's the whole thing. The amount of data that you need to plug in, the number of bodies that a camera needs to see, that the computer needs to see, is unfathomable. It's not going to be within my
It's
lifetime.
huge. It's a
And people
huge
always
data
ask
set.
me, "Oh, aren't you afraid that AI is going to take your job?" I said, "Not at all.
Not your job, not my
Not
job.
mine,
A lot of other people's jobs maybe, but not, I don't
maybe.
think ours particularly. Yeah.
No. And it's the same thing when it comes to, and I'm going to say this, the first, what was the article called? Coach GPT. The first time you have
Yes.
something like that, who's
Yes.
going to use it are going to be 16 to 28-year olds.
Oh, that's probably true.
And because they trust it. A
Yeah.
lot of young
And
people
because
right now
they've
have
grown up
had
getting
AI,
everything on their phone, right?
right?
They're
And they've had AI
already
long enough
tuned into it. Yeah.
and they trust it. They think
Yeah.
it's the end all be all. A lot of them, not everybody. My kids tell me it's all bogus and everything. And I say, look, there's positives and negatives. Don't discount everything. But that is going to be the group that probably wouldn't hire us anyway.
Well, and that's the thing is like ChatGPT has the potential, like a lot of these things do, for making better quality. I'm going to say not necessarily good quality, maybe good quality, but better quality coaching available to
Mhm.
people who would not have access to that. And
What
again, when I think
100%.
about runners, you think about runners, even you think about a lot of the cyclists, they're not ever going to get a coach. They want
No.
to run 3 5Ks a year, or they want to work up to a half marathon or whatever they want to do. Or maybe they just
Mhm.
like to run, but they want to get a little better at it. Like that is the perfect person to use something like that.
Yes.
Who's doing a sport that is relatively well understood in terms of training protocols, right? That's relatively
Mhm.
straightforward. Um, and then okay, so you're going to do some hill sprints, or you're going to do some wind sprints, or you're going to go, fast and slow, or whatever it is, and basically gives you something to follow. Like that's fantastic. And
Yep.
again, creates accessibility for a lot of people who wouldn't have accessibility to any of that information otherwise.
Absolutely. And young people who want to look better, who want to get in better shape, what we did was we basically looked at the magazines and copied the workouts without
Right,
realizing the
exactly.
amount of performance enhancing, drugs that these people were on means that there's no way my body was ever going to look like that or recover from the
Uh-huh.
workout it's making me do. However,
Yes.
that's what we did. And we thought
Yeah.
and it got us certain results. And when you're young, your body can recover a lot faster and you get injured a lot less. And if you do, you recover fairly quickly and you seem to snap back. So for those people, I think the AI model probably will work. I'll be honest. There was a program that I was using. It's the only one I've ever found that literally had all of our props. It had a Viper, it had Bosu, it had a ball, it had
Oh,
medicine balls, it
yeah.
had sandbells, it had everything you could think of, suspension trainers, you name it. And what was nice is there are times I go to the gym when I just want to work out. And
Right,
I'm not, I don't
and
want
you
to,
want somebody to motivate you, right?
yeah.
You don't wanna have to figure it out yourself, just tell me what to do. Yeah, for sure.
And you hit random and you tell it what tools you want and roughly what goals you want. You hit random, how long you want to work out for, how much rest you want in between sets. Boom, it gives you a workout and it shows you a video of the exercise. And it's like, great. For that, it's wonderful. And that's been around
Yeah.
for a long time because we remember VHS tapes. Basically, workouts like that have
Yeah,
been
exactly,
around.
pre-programmed workouts, absolutely, and they're great for many, many purposes.
And for a lot of people, that's all they need. But when you're
Yeah.
talking about getting into specificity, which a lot of people come to Pilates for. A lot of people come to
Mm.
people like me for that specificity because they have specific goals, specific needs, and usually injuries or, things that are preventing them from being able
Yeah.
to just go out and do everything. And in that, you're
Yeah,
never
and
going to replace what we see.
no, no, and, I mean, one other thing about, like, the pre-programmed workout, scenario, whether it's ChatGPT or whether it's VHS tapes or whether it's, an an Apple Watch workout, like, there's a
Right.
million really great things out there, yeah? And those can all be useful. One of the things that, running into a little bit in Pilates, because I, ran a teacher training program for a long, long time, and I still talk to many of the educators, is now the educators on the students' tests, they look at the test and go, because students have to write up a program. It's like, is this program from ChatGPT or from, the equivalent? And they're like,
Yes.
yeah. And I haven't looked at enough of them, honestly, to go, is this a good program or is this a bad, like, what is happening there? Because that, when I think about this specifically from the Pilates lens, there are a bazillion exercises in Pilates, like really
Yes.
significantly more than in the average personal training repertoire. And if you go to something like Instagram, and if you're pulling off of the web,
Oh
you've
my
got
gosh.
like 100 billion more, many of which have been done with 4 people in a small room and have no, are not
Yeah.
really well tested. We'll put it that way. So that really gets that just speaks to the challenges of the data set and the learning process, right? Because all these things are all these ChatGPTs, et cetera, all these AI models come from learning, right? They like gather a whole bunch of data, and then they kind of refine it and refine it and refine it. And you as the interface can refine it. Okay, I want to focus on arms. I want to focus on legs. I want to focus on
Hmm.
whatever I want to focus on. And maybe you can get to the point where you get something really good. But then I'm thinking of these new instructors. Can they even recognize if this makes sense or not?
I was,
Probably not yet,
when you
just
were
because
saying
it's
this,
complicated.
yeah, my brain is already thinking about that, thinking, okay, the gym I go to, it's mostly young people, a lot of young people.
Yeah.
I'm anonymous there, which is why I go there with my kids and my family and everything. And I watch the other instructors and I kind of wonder where they learned that. Those are interesting ideas. And I don't know the person. I don't know their goals, their objectives. Walk around with blinders because I don't judge. I don't know their goals. But sometimes I'm like, interesting choices there. I mean, some things are crazy, crazy go nuts. But some things I'm thinking,
Right.
okay, I don't know if I would have chosen that, but okay, if the person can do it and they're enjoying themselves, what do I care? That's
Yeah.
fine. But
Yeah.
now I'm wondering how many people are just doing the Chat GPT version of going in thinking, okay, what is Mary going to do today? Boop. Okay, here's a program. And that's what I'm going to do with that person. Or I need a new core workout program. Boop. Oh, that looks fine. Without really asking yourself, is it appropriate for, you know, Jeff, Jamie, and, Jerome, whoever's in front of me? Is it appropriate for all of them? We used to call it the workout of the day, the exercise du jour.
Yeah.
Uh, you
Absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
it was just everybody got the same workout, and you always saw those trainers at the gym, and you'd see it. If you're there long enough, you see they do the same thing with everybody. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of wondering if that is becoming more of the norm with the younger trainers, not necessarily the older ones, because it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. I couldn't even figure you give me a couple hours, I'd still have a hard time trying to figure out how to use the computer to do that for me. My brain is a lot
Right.
faster and
Yeah.
I haven't got the patience
Yeah. I
anyway.
could not have the patience either. I mean, it's interesting because it could go either way. It could go any way, right?
Yeah.
It could be that they have a resource, and that's the pretty good thing about Pilates instructors here, because that's my bailiwick. They've got a resource that gives them a workout that they can follow. And as a new
Mhm.
teacher, planning programs in Pilates is like a nightmare because there's just way too many options for many people. It's like, okay, I'm just going to follow this. And then maybe they do that and they do the next one, they do the next one. And maybe they learn from that process of having
Mhm.
something to follow, right? Having some structure. And they realize, okay, well, that worked for Alice, didn't work for Louise, didn't work for Jerome, but it did work for these guys. And maybe that, helps them with their class programming, helps them kind of figure that out and gives
Mhm.
them other possibilities in terms of programming that they might not have thought of. And certainly, but the other piece that you're talking about is what we talked about at the beginning was, where's the filter? Where's the
Yeah.
critical thinking? And that, I mean, that's missing from the entire world, honestly, at this point. Like, I think it's just gone out the window. But basically, in terms of fitness, that is the thing. Is this appropriate for this 65-year-old with osteoporosis? Is this
Mhm.
appropriate for this person who had lumbar disc surgery 3 months ago?
Right.
Those are good questions. And I don't know that you're going to get a good answer if you put in, I want a reformer program for somebody who had back surgery 3 months ago. Maybe you do.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
wanna I wanna see your opinion on this. Um, a famous podcaster, was talking about AI and was bringing all this sort of thing up. And what they were seeing in the industry is that senior coders were being kept, but a lot of junior coders were being let go and gotten rid of because
Right.
AI was taking over their jobs.
Right.
But my first thought, and what this host started talking about, was, but how do you make a senior coder if you don't get the experience of being a junior coder?
Mm.
How do you become, if you're not
That's
a
just a
lot of
really good point, period. That's just a really good point. How do you become good at something if you don't start with not being good at something? Whatever it is.
right. And if you're thinking about in what we do, being a beginner and having to go through the thought process of, well, okay, this person has this, and okay, I want to do this and I want to create this, and thinking things through, really working
Mhm.
at it
Yeah,
makes you better at it quickly because,
absolutely.
and the
Problem
more
solving.
people you see, also the more variables are thrown in there. So it's not, oh, wow, this workout worked for those 5 people, but man, it's not working for these 3. Wonder why. And over the
Right.
course of years, you become better and you start seeing patterns over and over again. Okay, I know kind of what's going to work for these people. And how a professor told me is the learning process. I think I've mentioned it to you before, is like the alphabet. And you see a child walking at the beginning, it's like A, G, Y. They can't figure it out. And then they sort of toddle, and then it's A, B, C, X, Y, Z, elemental P. The brain starts putting together these
Yeah.
clumps,
Yeah.
and eventually it's the alphabet all the way through. Well, that's all learning processes. When you first start, you're grasping at
Yeah.
straws trying to put things together. And then your
Yeah.
body starts figuring things out. And again, you've got clumps that people are fitting into. Not everybody, but
Yep.
enough people. And
Yep.
eventually you start seeing that you can see the whole picture. You're not just
Mhm.
looking at one specific thing. It's sort of like looking in hockey. You're not just watching the puck, but you're watching the entire floor, the entire ice. Or football, you're able to
Right.
watch the entire field, not just watch the ball. You're able to
Yeah.
see more because you've experienced more. Well, how do you get to that experience without getting the experience?
And that's yeah. I mean, that's it's funny because what you described there is also really how AI learns, right? Like
Mhm,
this whole neural net concept and this whole idea that it takes information and then it tries to make associations. I mean, much like we do, it has the potential ability to accelerate that.
mhm,
But as a human, not a machine, but a human, um, that data collection process, if you will, which is really what that is, it's like I
mhm,
always think about it as building my internal database. It
mhm.
took years of watching people to be able to recognize patterns like pretty quickly and go, okay, try this, okay, try that. This has worked
Right.
a bunch of times. I'm going to try this again here. And it is that process of learning, not
Mhm.
repeating, not
Yes.
doing what you're told, but actually learning, experimenting, seeing what works, asking if it worked. If it did, great. If it didn't, why not? Right? That's the process, but whereby you really learn.
Yes.
Um, I mean that is actually how it happens. No matter what your field is, that's what
Mhm.
happens.
Yep.
And I think you're right. I think, and I've seen this in instructors too, that those who get too locked on to this is how I do it, like this is my workout, this is my beginner workout, da, 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 da. Um, those are the ones that stop learning
Mhm.
and stop seeing what's in front of them. I'm being a little fussy here, but really stop seeing what's in front of them because they've glommed onto this, they're attached to this particular thing, and things that don't fit into that, whether it's a
Yeah.
body that doesn't really work that way or whether it's somebody who doesn't really seem to like what they're doing, like they just get chucked out so that they're only dealing with those who reinforce their worldview.
Yeah. 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 I was listening to an interview, with Billy Corgan, Smashing
Mm.
Pumpkins singer-songwriter, and he was saying that back in the day, you actually had to be good to be a musician.
Yeah,
And to be
exactly.
a producer, and to be a mixer, and to have all of these
Yeah,
jobs, you had to really understand and know it all. And
yeah,
he said, in the next 5 years, the people that are going to be celebrated may not be the people who are the best musicians, but maybe the person who can press the buttons the best, who can turn on the computer program and press those buttons the best. And that is what worries me about people seeing our industry and saying, I don't want the best trainer at the gym to be the one who can program the computer or ask the right questions to their AI bot in order to get the proper workout. I want someone who actually is doing the thinking themselves and not relying on the computer. Because I don't know about you, but if the Wi-Fi goes out, it's like the whole house shuts down,
Right, right,
right?
right.
Well, guess what?
Yes.
That's what's going to happen. If one of these bots
Yeah.
goes out, and people are be, well, I don't know what to
Ah,
do. I'm,
right.
I don't know. And we
The
can't say
robots are
that that
running
doesn't
me.
happen because that happens all the time.
Yeah. You know, I think about this with AI. You brought up musicians, so I'm thinking about this in terms of musicians. It can it can imitate anything, right?
Mhm,
You can say, write a pop song
mhm.
to AI. Like we played with
Yep.
this the other day. We are actually doing this, and it's like it writes a pretty good pop song,
Mhm.
and they could probably even maybe even be like a professionally useful pop song. And so there's a way in which AI has the ability to do generic things extremely well.
Exactly.
Right? Because I mean, you think about how much music you think of, I'm sure, is generic, and I do too. Like, oh, I feel like I've heard that same song 800,000 times. AI can do that all day long because that's what it's drawing from. So then,
Mhm.
for me, the more important thing, and I think you brought this up in a way too, is like, where is the human in this? Where is the
Yes.
uniqueness? Where is the perspective? Where is the experience? All
And the
of those
soul.
things are, and the soul. I know it's like, because if you think about your example of the Wi-Fi going out and then not knowing how to program for your client, the machines are running you,
Exactly.
right? I mean, like really, the machines are running you. You are no longer running the machine and telling it what you need, and then doing what or telling it what to do. It's telling you what to do, which
Mhm.
is
And
just
that could easily be happen in the
well,
next
it is
10
happening.
years
I think I think it is happening in many,
in certain
in little, in
clusters, yes.
subtle, in certain clusters, in different ways, in different industries. I think that's happening. That's
I follow
fascinating. What a
a
weird
couple
time.
of podcasters from the music industry. I did
Yeah,
musical
yeah,
production for years, and so I'm really still
yep.
interested in it. And I listen to people like music attorneys, and they will bring up the fact that, first of all, when someone's listening to music, a lot of younger people can tell the difference between an AI song and a non-AI song. But the question
Hmm.
comes down to, do they really care?
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's going to come down to the labels and the recording companies saying, well, heck, why do I need Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran when I
Exactly.
can just say, I want to create a song in the same fashion
In the
of
style of exactly
about this
with a slightly
topic?
lower voice. Yeah,
Yes. And let's
yeah,
try this, let's try that. Oh, let's change the key. Oh, okay, that works.
all
And
that.
in a matter of minutes, it's out there.
Yep, yep,
And I've done it.
exactly.
I've seen it happen. And
Yeah,
again, the question comes down to, can you hear the difference in the soul? Can you hear the difference in the sound of the singing and the character of the voice and all of that? That's the one thing I don't know if it's gotten yet, because I've listened and I can tell the difference between AI and non. There's a
huh,
missing quality. And
yeah,
even to a tuned ear, I'm thinking there's something missing. And I'm not
uh-huh.
100% sure I can put my finger on it, but I can tell the difference. You can hear that this
Interesting.
does not have the character's missing. Something in it is missing. And I think with what we
Huh.
do, that is what's going to be missing. You can get something generic. You can get
Yeah,
something generic for anybody.
yeah,
But the people who come to me regularly, to come to you regularly, or any of our people out there, when they're coming to us, there's a reason. There's a trust. There's
yeah,
something that we give that's beyond what someone else does who works at another facility or whatnot.
yeah,
How many times has someone told you, I got a referral for you, and I was told not to work with anybody else in the facility but
yeah, exactly.
you,
Yeah,
because that's who they trust and they know me, they know you. And That quality is what I think is going to separate people who are really good from those who are going to be reliant on AI and who are going to be replaced ultimately by AI.
You know, yes, and in the hope, I think, for both of us
Yeah, let's hope.
is and the experience too for both of us, I think, is so much of what we do, and many of you out there do as well, is it's not just about the workout. It's not just about what they're doing when they're there.
Mhm.
It's about how they feel when they're there and what the connection is with the person that they're with, and do you actually
Yep.
understand them, and do you listen to them, and you were just telling me a little bit earlier, right? And if that person is going on and on about some sports team that may or may not be of interest to you at the present time, like, that's fine. They need to do that. That may be useful to them, and that's something that chatbot presumably will not interact with them about,
You know what?
right? I mean,
I There was a great article that talked
yeah.
about this specifically. Claude,
Hmm.
one of the chatbots out there,
Anthropics, yeah.
I kid you not, it is getting down to the point that it will talk to you in a way that is very humanistic, that you would swear because it'll feed your ego a little bit, but still
Yeah,
be able
yeah,
to give
yeah.
you
No, I've heard
critiques in a
about
way
this.
that you
Yeah,
take it,
yeah.
and it's scary because I've seen it and I've heard it,
Yeah, I've seen
and
it
you
too.
start talking to this friggin' machine and thinking, "Wait a minute, they're stroking my ego, and I can see they're stroking, but it still kind of feels good. But they're stroking my ego, and then they'll criticize me. Oh, I really should think about that. Oh, yeah, and I'm like, wow. There's something there's something out there that's still they're getting close to that, and I'm hoping it'll never be replaced. That is not going to replace us personality wise. I'm praying.
Well, is it going to be there? Is it going to like help take you to the doctor when you?
No.
I don't know. It's like, I mean, we've talked. There's been a lot of discussion about AI and mental health, and these
Yes.
chat bots, and particularly teenagers getting kind of
Yeah.
obsessed with their chat bot as their mental health assistant, if you will, and then often sometimes leading to disastrous consequences.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, there again, there's no human in the mix.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't know about you, and I think this is really a generational thing, because I'm old enough now that, like, this is not a replacement for my friends. Just saying. Like, my phone does not for you, because we're not watching. The phone is not a replacement for my friends. Um,
Yep.
the phone is predictable. Like, what's going to happen. You can control it. It is like, it's this tiny little universe. There's so much more
Mhm.
interesting things in the world. I mean, that's kind of what I love about talking to Brian on this podcast. Is he says something and then I say something. Oh my, I hadn't thought about that. Right? That's
Mhm.
that's the fun for me. That's the exciting thing. And I'm not really sure that Claude or any of those are going to tell me something really super exciting that takes me in a totally different direction.
Yeah.
I think they're going to
Yeah.
just build themselves around where I already am and what my biases are, and then feed that.
Yeah.
And that's not where growth happens. That's not, to me, that's not that interesting, honestly. I know other people it is, but for me, it's not that interesting.
I
Um,
look at I was before we went on, I was talking about, being at the doctor recently and whatnot. And one of my clients said
mhm.
something about, well, AI is taking over all of that. And I had a scan done and one was misread, one was properly read. And oh, but AI would have read that right away and could have told you within seconds and told you right. I said, are you 100% sure? And do I trust that it would see it every single time? And what about those 5% of the time when it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, but it ain't a duck? And it could be something a lot more serious. What about those 5%? Are those just going to be written off as, huh, you know what? Cars are going to crash. So so what? I'm not willing to be that person. I'm not willing to
So,
be that, person
yeah,
on the operating
yeah,
table when it's just like,
yeah,
oh, you need an ACL done. Here's the program for ACL.
right.
Go. We'll come back in 45 minutes when it's done and you'll be finished.
So a couple points. My one of my relatives is an interventional radiologist, so she's a radiologist basically, and we've had a lot of conversations with her about AI taking over radiology
Yeah.
because and I think they're really getting to the point where it is way more accurate than a person interpreting
Yeah.
a screen. Partly because again, you can train it on 500,000
Yeah.
MRIs of the low back, right? And you can say, okay, so all of these are considered this, da, 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 and it can recognize those patterns more quickly and honestly more effectively than a human can. So there's a way in which, like, yes, certain things will be, again, this is a giant data set. You can train it on a whole bunch of already done data,
Yep.
and it can be potentially more accurate. You still want that human interface.
You still want someone to
You know,
double
you still
check.
want that person to double check it, and especially double check it before they talk to the patient. You
Yes.
know, like, oh, well, you know, they said this, this, and this. That looks great, but here's something else that I'm seeing, which may be an anomaly. It may be, you know, your weird anatomy because everybody's weird.
Yep.
And who knows what's going to happen with that? Oh, maybe it'll be better at least
I
sometimes.
had a I had a client who had a MRI done of their back. 3 different doctors looked at it. All of them
Mm.
said, "Well, we're not seeing any herniations. We're not seeing anything there." Da 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 da. One of them went, "Oh, well, there's that tumor."
Right.
They weren't specifically looking for that. These are physicians
Exactly.
who are orthopedists who
Yeah.
are looking for those gross
Yeah.
anomalies. And again,
On the bony myofascial level, not like,
right.
oh, what's that weird thing over there? Yeah.
And it wasn't that big, it was small, but here was a physician who
Mm.
actually had seen those before. So they had the
Uh-huh.
experience of being able to say, "Oh, yeah, you see this? Yeah, it's the size of, the tip of my little pinky. It's not very big, but you see how it could be pressing on your spinal cord right there in certain
Oh,
positions?" Because he was only
yeah.
having pain lying down and nowhere else.
Okay.
It
Which is
started
weird.
only lying
Yeah.
down, and he said, "Well, yeah, you were lying down, every muscle relaxed, and it pushed against that. And that's why you're having pain at night." But he could play sports. He could do all sorts of stuff, never had an issue for a long
Right.
time. And then it
Right.
got large enough that it began
Yeah.
to affect other things. But again, if he hadn't seen that doctor and he had just eventually thought, well, it's not a herniated disc. I don't know what's causing this.
Right. I'm okay.
Exactly. So I think there is a point where AI can do radiology and has enough of those things. But I think it definitely needs the filter at the end, but also at the beginning to say, here are all of the symptoms, not just back
Right.
pain.
Right.
Back
Right.
pain when sleeping, positional, da 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 da, so that
Yeah.
that will filter the information a bit more. And I
Yeah.
think you'll not get such a generalized answer.
Yeah.
It'll be a little
Yeah.
more specific to the person. And I think that's what we need. And then the doctor should look at it before the patient walks in the door and not in front of the patient and be able to
Right.
say, "Oh, yeah, I agree." Or, you know,
Hmm.
"This is right.
There's
However,
something else here.
I I want to do this." Uh, Great example is I had a client who went in for a mammogram. Everything was clear. She saw one doctor, said, "Yep, everything's clear." Went to another in the same practice who said, "I don't like the way this looks."
Hmm.
I said, "Why?" There's no large mass, but it I can't explain it, but it's a little cloudy. But not
Yeah. Oh,
don't really know. She couldn't quantize it in her head. She couldn't say it, but she just said, "Something doesn't look right. Could
yeah.
we go in and check?"
Yeah.
And the client was gung ho for it, was said, "Okay, go ahead." Found that she had already like stage 3 breast cancer. Luckily, it was caught then. It was basically the entire breast had this basically, it was a large mass, but it was so small
Right.
that and so thin that it wasn't showing up as like a large lump.
Because it was like a
And
film, kind of,
exactly,
or something, or just
exactly.
like a thin membrane or
Yeah,
something. Uh-huh.
But on
Yeah.
on the screen, it looked like it was just, she said, it's a little cloudy. I can't explain it. It just
Right,
doesn't
but it
look
just doesn't
right.
feel right. Yeah, doesn't feel right.
And again,
Yeah,
that's that finite thing that I think we still need in medicine or in a
yeah,
lot of things.
absolutely.
You know, if I have a general contract, yes, I think it'd be fine to, I need to write up a will. I don't really think, based on my income and everything, you know, I
It's
haven't got
not
hundreds of millions of
complicated.
dollars that I'm trying
It's
to give
not
away.
complicated.
It's not
Yeah.
complicated at all. However, if there is something very, very serious that I need to take care of, I'd kind of like to know that a real attorney is looking at it from all angles and be able to see what we need. Same with doctors and same with every profession. Engineering. I kind of want to make sure that if I'm building a bridge, that it's been looked at from every single angle possible before people start driving over that thing.
So this kind of brings us to a potential wrap up. And this was
Mhm.
a quite a free ranging. This was like a free range scenario. This was not a factory farmed scenario here. But it's like I think this is part of our future, all of our futures
Yeah.
in many many different areas. And I think the one thing Brian and I just keep hoping for is that there will always be a place for individualization, for customization, for experience and the value of experience and the
Yeah.
value of the personal touch of communication and working with an actual human. I don't think that's ever really going to go away. I'm not sure humans are really designed to live in a completely robot run world, but who knows? Like anything could change. My world, I focus on that. I focus on connecting with people, making things happen, paying as much attention as I can, doing the best job I
Yep.
can to understand what I'm seeing, and so do you.
Yep.
And that's my commitment because that's how my database has grown, and that's how I've really love what I do. That's how I've learned to really enjoy this work is the complexity and the
Mhm.
differences, and every human's different. And that's the fun part.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what makes us good at what we do, and hopefully makes, all of our listeners good at what they do, or at least want to be better and continue
Yeah,
striving to be better. So,
absolutely.
yeah. So, I'm curious. I'm going to throw this out there to our listeners here and say, okay, what do you guys think? Do you think
Yeah.
that AI will ever replace what you're doing? Now, not everybody who listens to us is a personal trainer, a Pilates instructor, or whatnot. Do you think it
Yeah.
can? You think that it's something that could take our place? And if so, then where does humanity go from here? Because we still need to make money. We
Good
still have to have jobs.
question.
We still got to do something. I've got kids
Exactly.
now, and I told them, make sure that whatever career you pick, man, make sure it's AI proof in some way, shape, or form, or adjacent, that you're going to be able to, eke out a living, because
Yeah.
that's got to be something there. So if I'd be curious to see what, our listeners,
Yeah.
think about that.
Absolutely. Send us your thoughts. This is such a wide open topic with all kinds of
Exactly.
ramifications everywhere. And if you have children, whew, their life is going to be different. And I think about that a lot with all my great nieces and nephews.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys very much for listening. We really appreciate every single one of you. Do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate that. You can always check us out on Instagram, Moving Combos. You can also email us at movingcombos@gmail.com. And from Nora St. John, I'm Brian Ritchie. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye, guys.